All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sharin Stories. I'm your host, Peaks, with my two beautiful co-hosts, Sarah Stace and the real St. Paul. This is not a therapy session. You will not find any mental health professionals here, nor are we a substitute for said people. We are just regular people sharing and hopefully normalizing our stories with mental health. Today on the podcast, we have a fine, strapping young Canadian man, accredited by universities as a Master of Science. And if you are ever curious about the oxidative copper catalyzed aerylation of sp3 carbon centers via decarboxylation, he is just the guy to tell you about it. A person who became an immediate and lifelong friend to me upon our travels to Korea, and an all-around awesome dude. Can we all give a warm welcome to Anis?
Woo!
Can I just say this man did the research and found my actual master's thesis and read the title. I am blown away.
That wasn't just a string of words put together.
No,
that was real.
That was the actual
That was his
title of my
master's
master's
thesis.
I'm so impressed that you went and found it.
I found it. I also read the entire thing, and I think it's a bit trivial when you take a look at the way decarbonization, a word I just created there.
I thought the same thing, but my boss, he just wouldn't agree. I just had to go with it. I'm sorry, dude. Sorry to disappoint.
Oh. It looks like a riveting read. So excited to get the last 400 pages done. And
it'll knock you out, that's for sure.
Wait, it's not that long though, is it? It's not like 400 pages, is it?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's like 100 and something pages.
That's still a lot.
It's a traumatic memory. I try not to think about it very much. It's in the past. But yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see how it played into your story, if at all. So without further ado, we just jump right into it. We're going to give you the floor. I don't know exactly how you want to lay it out. If you want to do more question back and forth, or if you like to do the whole story, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then we kind of get our questions at the end. So whatever you want to do, we just kind of feel it out as we go. And I'm pretty excited, man. As you know, we've known each other for 2 years now, and I definitely didn't know anything until after this. So I'm super pumped to hear your story and to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's true. When we were out in Korea, I don't think we had we hung out, but I don't think we ever had really deep one-on-one, this is my soul, this is what I've been through. And so listening to your podcast was a really eye-opening experience, because you struck me as such a go-getting you were one of the most confident people that I knew over there. You had so much charisma and confidence in your work, and to hear about your struggles was really, I think, humanizing in a way. Just shows that we all have these issues that we deal with. We all go through these things. Right.
Gosh, so, I'm not crying.
No, we're not crying yet. It's only a couple minutes later. So yeah, I guess I'll just jump into it maybe from the beginning. So, I grew up in Canada. I grew up in a small town to immigrant parents. I'm a first generation Canadian. Both of my parents are from Iran, and I think having parents that are immigrants that did come from, they came from another country. They had to kind of build themselves up from the start, essentially, in Canada. There's a lot of pressure associated with that. So I remember growing up, there was a lot of academic pressure, a lot of pressure to succeed. And I think that kind of, affected things down the road as well. I'm an only child. So I think that also has a lot of potential emotional baggage, or a lot of connotations that when you tell people about it, they assume certain things. And, it's true growing up, going through starting elementary school, I didn't really have the most friends. And I think a big part of that was being an only child. You don't socialize a lot with other kids your age. You don't learn to share. And so it was a lot of just learning as you go in elementary school with kids that aren't really the nicest when you make mistakes like that, where you don't know how to interact with them. And, I think I was bullied a lot in elementary school. I had a close circle of friends, but there was still a lot of times where I felt kind of isolated. And I took a lot of that and kind of focused my energy on my schoolwork. And then also I played way too many video games until maybe high school. I took so much time in there. And so I really neglected, let's say, the like the like more physical health and stuff like that. So I was overweight. I was a pretty overweight kid, starting from maybe like grade 4 out until like end of high school. And so that was also a big confidence blow thing. I didn't really think about it much when I was younger because, you don't really, you're not that self-aware as a younger kid growing up through school. It's not until maybe you get to an age where you start seeing, let's say role models, for lack of better words, in the media and in the public at large that, are similar age to you, but, they're a lot more in shape. They're a lot more, it seems like they're a lot more put together. And so I don't think it ever got to a point where I had an eating disorder, but I do remember being not very confident with how I looked. And I think that played into my experiences growing up. As a younger kid, like going through middle school and high school, I remember having a lot of like those confidence issues kind of worked into, as a kid, you have crushes on people. Like that's just how it is. And I remember like, being fixated on a person and then nothing happening because, I didn't have any confidence in myself. And that would make me feel really bad about things. And, I got over that. I've really improved since then. But there are some residual effects, I think, from just that upbringing that maybe I'm not self-aware enough to understand. And I think that's one area that I'm really working on is self-awareness, because it's really hard to, look back at yourself since you're just living in, like, you're experiencing your reality. So it's very hard to look at it from an objective angle. So I'm trying to work on that. And then I think moving on from there, I think that upbringing of a lot of academic pressure and like I'll toot my own horn a bit, but I think I was pretty good at school, and that's a good and a bad thing. So the thing is, I think ultimately, when I raise my kids, I'm going to try and de-emphasize the academic process, because if you're so good at school and you're so good at these like really rigid, defined like tests and exams and stuff like that, you don't take risks. You're not used to failing. And life is just a series of failures and like how you bounce back from those failures. And so that really shaped a lot of my decisions post-grad. So, Peaks mentioned I did a master's. I think one of the reasons I did a master's was, sure, I like chemistry, but also I was afraid of what was out there. And this was like a very easy option, because it's not like medical school or dental school or law school where you have to fight other people. Like in Canada, at least, if you want to go to grad school and you're like near the top of your class, they will fly you out to universities to be like, hey, come here, do research with us. We're going to like, show you the university, show you the research, show you the facilities. So it was a very enticing prospect. And so I think the reason I took that path was because my upbringing was so academically focused that I was very risk averse. All that saying, my parents did a great job. I love them to death. They did, I think once, how do I say this? No matter how good of a job parents do, there's always some way that your kid's going to be screwed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, that's just how it is. And it's not their fault. It's going to be the upbringing you have, the decisions you made. But yeah, and I think those are like the big things. Is that 10 minutes?
No, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
I already have a ton of questions, so it really doesn't matter. In the end, it's going to end up being 30 minutes.
Oh,
so
right. And I guess one more thing I should add is that I think also a big part of my mental health struggle has been my identity, because growing up as the family of immigrants in a smaller town, there wasn't really a huge Persian, like Iranian community. And so, most of my friends in school were, like, let's say white Canadian for the lack of a better term. And so I feel like I identified more, like I would call myself Canadian first. Like that's what I identify the most with. But as I get older, I'm trying to learn a bit more, identify more with where my parents came from in that culture, because I think that's a really important thing that I want to keep and I want to like pass down to the next generation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to hold on to any sort of cultural background that your parents have as a whole. But I do have a ton. I just want to, before I get into the questions, I want to kind of see where you're at today. Like right now, I'm talking to you at this moment. Where is this in terms of 14-year-old Denise, in terms of 21-year-old Denise? Where does this Denise stand?
I think right now I'm the best I've ever been, and hopefully I will get better in the future. Like the reference point I think about, the recent reference point is like being in Korea like 1 year ago. And that was fun and that was great, but being there, I kind of knew that that wasn't a permanent thing. And so being back in Canada, I feel a lot more comfortable with where I am. The career that I've chosen, even though the specific job is, it's a starting point, but I'm a lot more comfortable there. I'm a lot happier with, how I feel, how I look. And I think I'm in a good place right now. Yeah.
Awesome. So for you, you said socialization was a huge part of kind of getting you into this funk, right? It was kind of the opening of, all these problems for you, made you feel you couldn't identify, you disassociated a little bit here and there with video games, something I'm still doing. But the thing is, I'm wondering if socialization was also in the end something that was a big help later on and something that also may have pulled you out of it. As you got more social and more comfortable with yourself, did you see yourself did that make a change in your life?
100%. Oh yeah. Like humans are social creatures. Like none of us are. I think no one is an exception. And I think, as I grew up, my confidence got better slowly, like over time. And I learned about the things that I was good at and the things that, what's that that's like the personality quiz, like the 4-letter one, that
Myers-Briggs.
That one. I'm like, it's
Sarah's favorite thing,
the console personality type, like INFJ or something like that. And so
I'm INFJ.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Like I really, even though I came from like a pretty introverted starting point, I think I'm very extroverted in the sense that I want to help people. I want to like make sure that if like I'm hosting a party or something, people are having a good time. I want to be in a service kind of role, and I think that's why I've drifted towards, even though I have like a hard science background, I've drifted towards sales and like product management, because I want to be in a position where I can help people do the science and do the things they want, and I want a job where I can socialize and work with people constantly. So
nice. I mean, I straight up, from what we knew in Korea, our conversations, our hangouts, everything, there really didn't seem to be an issue with socialization for you. There didn't seem to be an issue kind of with anything. And like you said, you felt the exact same way towards me, right? Yeah. So it's wild to just sit here and be able to completely be a different person or seem like a different person. In Korea, I was about as good as I've ever been, in my opinion. So you did catch me at a fantastic time, but it is so impossible to recognize these things. And one of the biggest reasons is we just like to hide it, right? So for you, coming from first generation, do your parents now know anything about this? And if so, how do they handle hearing information about, past struggles or current struggles?
I think so. It's funny that you mentioned that because, so like when I finished off in Korea, like basically a week after my contract ended, and literally the day after I got out of a 1-year relationship in Korea, my dad actually came over to kind of hang out and help me move. And then we also went to Japan and traveled a bit after. So he saw me at probably the lowest point that I've ever been in recent memory, because I'm out of a relationship, like fresh, like literally less than 24 hours beforehand. I'm out of a job. I don't know like where my future is going at that point because I don't have a job lined up in Canada. I'm not going to be back for another month and a half. And so he saw how low I was, and as a father, he provided some really solid advice. Maybe not giving it in the most gentle way possible because that's just how dads are, but like it showed that he really cared for me, and I think he took it quite well. So like that's I think, and my mom, I think we've talked about it a bit, but maybe in not as much depth, but I think for the most part, they've been really supportive. And I remember when I finished my master's and I told my dad my plan to go to Korea, he was very confused because, I'd just done like a postgraduate science degree. And he's like, why are you doing a 180 and going to teach English in a foreign country? Like, what is this? This is ridiculous. And once I had the job lined up and I went, I think he came around to it and he understood that, oh, this is like, you're young. This is your time to kind of like take a risk and just do something completely out of the norm before you come back and then kind of try and figure out a more stable future going forward.
Yeah.
That's pretty. Yeah, I mean that's good. That's good. That's a good response. I think a lot of like Paul's talked in the past about his parents, and kind of how they just looked at this as wave it off. And if you taught in Korea, so you understand a lot of first generation immigrants, they do not understand it, and it would be impossible for them to understand it. They left a lot of times they leave their country because of issues in whatever it might be, war torn countries. Education may not be the best. So they're not learning about all this. And if they are learning about it, they're learning about it in a totally different way as a weakness. So it's always interesting to see how parents kind of react to this style, especially, parents of immigrants and things like that. I always like to hear in that regard.
I love how you ended your story just saying like, no matter, even if you have the best parents ever, you're still going to have, you as a child growing up into an adult, you're still going to have your baggage or your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when I was recording my story, I was very hesitant to say anything about my parents in case they were listening. But like, I did want to put it out there like, hey, I love you guys. I think like whatever you did, you were great parents and you still are great parents. You're so supportive and like you were, disciplined, but also allowed me to have fun and all that stuff. And yet somehow still I have major issues with them, and you will always have those things, and you can still love them and recognize that they're good parents and still know and still look at it from an objective lens and be like, when I'm a parent, I think this is how I'm going to do this differently, and that's it. Like it's just the way of the world. But I love that you put that out there and you said that.
Yeah. There really is no perfect way to do it. There's not. I mean, as a parent, as anybody, that's the thing with anybody on mental health is there is no one thing that caused it. You can grow up, you can have a huge divorce. That's not going to be the sole reason for your abandonment issues. Like all these things there is going to be a culmination of different events and different people you see that are going to lead to these problems. And when you tell your parents or when your parents hear about stuff like this, a lot of times you're nervous they're going to start blaming themselves, which like is huge fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
that's huge. Yeah.
It's a huge fear. Is that I like in no way do I want anybody to feel responsible for the way I feel, especially my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I always really find it interesting to see how parents react to it. And like at first, I think with my mom hearing about this, she was very ecstatic about it. She loved the idea, but I think hearing that first episode or going into that first episode, she was a little scared. She was like, "What? Like, is this going to throw me back a little bit? Am I going to have a tough week thinking about all these things?" And I told her, I was just like, "Listen, go into it, listen, and don't pay attention to how it happened or what had happened. Just listen to the story." And she messaged me and she just said, I got to start judging. I stopped judging without, in any situation. And she says, I'm not here to judge. I'm here to just listen. And that's it. So she obviously changed her tune a little bit, but it is always interesting to see anybody's reaction to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I can keep going. Paul, you want to jump in with a question or anything?
Oh, I just think that it's so cool that you mentioned about your bullying phase, and it's just like I totally relate to that because, like, you know, like when I didn't have a lot of friends either. Like I was mentioning on my episode, like when also in elementary, I was the bully in elementary, and then when it came to middle school, I was bullied, and that karma came back to me like real hard.
Oh.
Like I did not expect that, and it was just like nobody liked me, like I was beat up and all this stuff, and it was just so crazy. And then high school came, and then I started to have a little bit more friends, and then I got addicted to those friendships, like you know what I mean, because I felt so down. Like, I felt like I was worthless, and once I got that that attention or that relationship with friendships and stuff, it's just like I want more of this. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just I did everything and anything I can to maintain it. And like it was just, and now that's my problem. Like today, it's just like I will do anything for my friends. Like, you know what I mean? It was, even though it's bad for me, I will do it because it's because I want to maintain that friendship. And it's like a lot of people take advantage of me because I have a lot of friends who are just like, I have friends who were friends with me like 3 or 4 years, and then they were just like, "Well, you didn't know you were using you this whole time. You should have seen the signs." And it was just like, now I have a problem of detecting, like, who are my true friends, like So
to be fair, I oftentimes, without meaning to, feel like we're using you, Paul, because you do nothing but work on this. I just want you to take a break. I just want you to take a break every once in a while.
Peaks and I literally are like, Paul, it's 4 a.m. there. Like, you need to go to bed now. Like, I try to send reminders. I'm so curious for a question for Peaks and Anis. I pray that I just said that right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry. Okay. What was my question? Oh yeah. About Korea. So like you both mentioned that this was like an extreme high point in your life. And neither of you knew sort of this like mental health history that you've had. So I don't know. Was this like in Korea? Was that like your true persona and your true self coming out and just like living the way that you've always wanted to live? Or was it more like a mask, like a happy mask? I want to know, like, who are you?
You want to take this one first?
Yeah, because I think it's interesting that you mentioned true persona, because I believe that there is no true persona, because you will be different people depending on the circumstance and depending on who you're with. Right? So I think, I don't know, like I do, Andrew, I do want to learn a bit more about like why you went, because I'm not sure if you went into a lot of detail about that in the first episode. I'm not sure if we even talked about that much, but like the reason I went was because up until that point I just done like high school, undergrad, grad school, no breaks, no real like big risks or life changes. And through a series of events, I found out about this as an opportunity, as a way to like live abroad, make a little bit of money, but also just go completely out of your comfort zone. And that's kind of the reason I went. And once you get to about like 6 or 9 months in, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're doing the same thing every day and you're living in the same place, it's not going to become the exciting, or it's not going to become that like foreign experience anymore. And at that point it was like, okay, I've had my fill. I need to go back to reality. That's what it felt like for me. And I think that there are definitely parts of my persona and part of my personality that has continued since then. There's a lot of things I learned about myself and about what I'm capable of from that experience. But I personally don't think that was like a true reflection. It was just a stage. It was just like one evolution of like my mental health and of my personality. So Peaks, I want to know, why did you end up going? What was
so for me, I was 3 years into my career as a financial advisor. I went to school for finance, and it just kind of hit me probably about 2.5 years into it that what the fuck am I doing? I hate coming to work. I'm not enjoying anything that's going on. I don't care about finance. All I'm doing is making people who already have money get more money. Like, it's not like I'm working with poor people and helping them secure for their retirement. I'm working with people who live in Williamsville and live in these high suburban areas that don't really need it. And that's the whole goal, is like, I'm trying to get richer people to sign up with me. I'm not trying to go around and like find these projects where I can help people. Actually, the whole goal of a financial advisor is to get the person with the most amount of money in front of you. So I was kind of trying to distance myself from it. And I figured the best way to do that is actual distance. Physical distance.
Let me go so far away.
So I decided, on that, it was just more like, for me, traveling's always been huge. I've never lived outside of Buffalo until Korea, but I probably had spent about at least a year total backpacking in all these places, in different places around the world combined. So I just got up to the point where I wanted to try something new. I'd never been to Korea. I didn't know much about Korean food or culture. I didn't know about K-pop, and I wish I still didn't. And
shut up.
and so, and for me, it was just like exciting. And then once I got there, like you said, you looked at me as this confident person. I do firmly believe I'm confident. In my opinion, I have seen so much stupidity, and I shouldn't call it stupidity because it is just different ways of looking at the world. It is not stupidity. There are much more intelligent people that don't know things that I know a lot about, and that could probably destroy me on millions of other things. Obviously, I wouldn't come talk to you about science. But the thing for me is, like, I am confident in myself in terms of who I am as a person. I just am not confident in my social abilities. So alcohol is a big thing for making me confident in my social abilities. And for me, I don't drink a lot at home. I don't. It makes me sick. I don't feel comfortable. Oftentimes it ends up ruining my night or ruining the next morning. But in Korea, I don't know what it is with soju or whatever, but I can just drink it. It was easier for me. So like, I didn't feel sick all the time. I didn't worry about that. So I got to just like, I got to go out and be this social creature that I'd really never been before. Just with the little bit of catalyst that comes from alcohol. I oftentimes wish I didn't need alcohol for that catalyst, but in the end, I lose that social confidence. Outside of that, like, put me in a job, put me wherever I need to be. I feel comfortable with my abilities. So overall, I think you did see a more set form of Peaks. You didn't see a Peaks that was constantly switching from, social butterfly to quiet to not enjoying work to happy to sad. You just saw a pretty consistent me, which was something that I wasn't used to. I never really saw consistency in myself. I always change my opinions, always change my thoughts. I always change the way I want to do things. Like, I've probably in the last 4 months looking for a job, and I luckily have one now. In the last 4 months, I probably changed what I wanted to do 10 different times. And Anis, you're saying like you looked at Korea as a one-stop shop, and like, this is not reality. I'm going to go back to reality. To me, I looked at it as like, this Korea is a one-stop shop, but like, this lifestyle is not for me. I know I want to keep moving. I know I want to keep traveling, and I think it is firmly possible now in today's society to make a living and not do the same thing for 40 years straight, and survive and be able to travel while you do it. So Korea was just a huge, I guess, confidence booster for me. I always felt consistent for the first time in my life. And now that consistency, even though shit sucks in my life and I'm unhappy with just about everything the US is doing, like, I am still extremely happy with my life, with the way that I'm living it.
And you think you brought that back from Korea, that sort of feeling?
I've never had it before, and the only place I had it was Korea. So I got to imagine that's where it kind of stemmed from.
Because that's kind of what Anissa said too. Like you brought back some of that sort of experience that you had. You just, in a way that was more connected with reality, your reality, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I always learn something new about you. It's like it's so crazy. Like
I feel like I just rambled for way too long in the answer to that question. But I do want to get back to you, Anisse. I am not as important. I am not as important as you right now.
There's so much to learn behind that sick flow. So
God.
So much there.
Yeah.
Wait, are you referring to his hair?
Yes.
Not just hair up here. I got a brain as well.
Like a 19th century politician. It's really good.
That fresh lettuce, baby. All right, so I want to kind of jump back into it. I've seen it in my family before, not with me, but you said you were a fat younger kid. To use the only term I came up with on the spot. So now that you're older, do you think you clearly? I mean, I know you would not be considered overweight in the slightest. Do you still have leftover body issues, though? Is that still something that you fight with?
Hell yeah, dude.
Hell yeah. That's what I think.
100%. Like that. It's not as bad, but that I can swear. So that shit never leaves you. Like there's.
You can swear.
Yeah. Like that shit never leaves you. Like growing up, having your fundamental years where, I remember. I never thought it was a big deal, but like we would do in like middle school, we would do like runs around the block, like just like before every PE class, we just like go for maybe like 2 kilometers, something like that. And I remember I could barely run for like 200 meters before I had to start walking. I would just walk the rest of the way. And like at the time I was like, whatever. And then I would just walk with my friends. But I think looking back, there was a lot of potential, opportunities to improve my health and improve my confidence that I never really took. For whatever reason, I never took them. And, the whole working on my self-awareness thing, there are aspects that I don't realize probably yet, but there are things that just carry forward from that upbringing where you are overweight and you do feel sometimes excluded or left out because of that. Yeah.
Did you ever feel that you were like the ugly one out of your friends? Because
for me
it was like I always felt like I'm like like the plus one, or like, we need to bring him, but like but it's like I'm always like the one that's like the ugly one, because everybody of my friends are like beautiful or like they're an influencer and stuff like that. But it's just like I'm like, why am I not like them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why do I look like this? And do you feel that way within your friends? Like, or
I think I've definitely felt that way. Like I definitely felt like the odd one out. A lot of people in middle school and high school, they sometimes get into relationships, like even my friends, and I always remember I would be like the third wheel. I never got that opportunity during high school, and like looking back, I don't regret it, because high school relationships seem like a gong show. Like I wouldn't want to have to deal with that. But at the time, it was a very like maybe not a really sore point, but it was definitely something that I thought about. I think one of the things I'm trying to grapple with now is that looks aren't everything, even though society sometimes says they are. Like the whole like personality and how your actions and what you do are so much more important than that. And that's something that I'm trying to understand and trying to work on, is just working on my actions, not just my intentions, but like what I actually do and how I treat myself and others, and not just how I look. Because if beauty solved everything, you wouldn't have depressed, beautiful people, I guess. So it's a weird way of saying it, but like
it's a very logical step to take. But yeah, for sure. I feel like I relate to the relationship feedback that you talked about so earlier, the feedback loop, where you almost convince yourself like these relationships that exist around you happen out of just like miraculous phenomenon, and you're like wondering as you see all these relationships happen around you, you're like, fuck, why am I not just running into the love of my life? Like, what is that about? But here's what you do. You start like, so you're like, you don't talk to this, and you see it. Let's say now at this age, or maybe like 22, you see a girl from across the bar, you make eye contact, and like, you're like, oh, you know what? I don't really want to leave the bar yet. Your friend's like, I want to leave. You're like, I don't really want to leave yet. There's like a chance I run in and talk to this woman. And you just never make the move or never make the effort to go talk to this person. And then you kind of sit back and you're like, wait a second, why didn't she come up to me? Or like, why did it not work out? Should I have done something differently? You start to throw all these regrets into your mind. I don't have any personal experiences, you guys can tell, with this.
The story
but it creates, it's not a story. It's just,
I know, I get it.
It's a feedback loop. It's just, it is an example, and it probably is an exact story.
It's very good.
It's probably an exact story, and it's probably happened in my life. I know it has every time I've gone to any bar. But we just like create this feedback loop that like, why are we the ones not in a relationship? Is it we're not good enough, and then we don't really try for that relationship, and we just convince ourselves that like, okay, relationships just happen on their own. I'll just worry about myself for now. Do you ever find yourself doing that?
And I think what you just said, that's the key, right? Is like working when you start to work on yourself and you start to care about, you know, your mental health and your physical health and your needs, that's when potentially the right person can come along. That's when you're really open to being with somebody else, because a relationship isn't meant to fix you. You're meant to fix you. You need to be in a position where you need to be in a position where you can provide something to that other person, right? If you're in a position where you are just going to take because you're like, oh, this person's going to fix me, that's not going to work out. That's going to explode on you. So I think that was one of the like, just going back to Korea, I think that was one of the big things, was because, you know, grad school and undergrad, those are really tough times. Like as grad school, especially because in the area of chemistry I was in, you're doing like 12-hour days during the week, half day Saturdays, like you're just working. It's ridiculous. Oh, don't do it. It's ridiculous. So I never really
advice for all our listeners.
Yeah,
don't go to grad school. Whatever you do, higher education is wrong.
No. Let me rephrase. Go to grad school for the right reasons. I'm gonna be a little crude here, but one of my friends said was that the only reason you should do, okay, this is really crude, but like the only reason you should do a grad degree is if you want to like literally stick your dick in that subject. Like that's how much you want to do a PhD. You love it. Like you want to spend all day doing it. I didn't. So it was not the right choice. Ultimately, I think. I still don't regret doing it, but I think there could have been better ways of doing it. But what I was saying, what was I even saying? Point is, going to Korea, that was the first time being in that foreign environment, not knowing anybody, experiencing all these new things. That was the first time where I was like content with the experience, content with just being by myself. And that was when I met the person that I dated for the entire year in Korea.
Where exactly did you meet this person? I'm just curious.
At a house party that was the second time we met. The first time was getting our immigration cards. So
I know.
So Peaks is the facilitator. Thank you very much.
Peaks, wow. You threw a party? You threw a party?
I threw a number of parties.
You threw a number of
legendary parties, yes.
I cannot even get Peaks to come to my parties. He will not come. He just blows them off.
Speaking of, I can't come tonight, Sarah. I will not be able to make it tonight. But
No,
But-
wait. Okay, we'll talk about this later. But
yeah. But that being said, I just wanted to make sure we threw that in there.
yeah.
So we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to bring
geez.
up a question
Oh.
that we have each week, or at least try to get to each week. I normally send it to you, but we kind of already touched on it too much, and I want to change up the question to look at how it used to be how can major life changes impact your mental health, and I think with Korea we got a little bit too much into that. I want to ask, how has the quarantine been a factor in mental health for all of us, and in general, how do we think it is, in terms of people in society? Anybody?
Silence.
Do we answer that too?
Everybody, anybody. I'm. This is always a group conversation here, but so I'll start. You guys, if you guys want to sit there and be
I
quiet.
was honestly too busy looking at myself in the screen to hear your question, but
I think
I'm
it said
listening now.
I think it said two different kind of problems that it's created, or benefits, I guess. So overall, I think for some of us, especially those that didn't love like going and seeing people constantly, heavy introverts, I don't know if it's necessarily terrible for them right now, because you still get to see people from time to time, but you do it in settings that you enjoy more. In terms of when I live in Buffalo, I do not like going out to bars. I don't like super loud music, which seems to be the case anywhere you go. I prefer sitting around a table and putting a couple of drinks back, or smoking a little bit and talking with my friends. And that has been obviously much more common for me than it was before quarantine. On the other hand, I think quarantine's created so much stress for people, in terms of economic stress, societal stress, social anxiety, whatever it might be, that all this stress kind of combines to create more common anxiety, and also people are able to sit with their thoughts a little more. And depression is one thing that can really constantly creep, especially as the more time you think about it. So I think it can be very detrimental in those regards, where it just kind of slowly allows you to be introspective, but in a negative way. Not sure if that really made sense, but those are my two ways I think it's affecting people. One a little bit more beneficial, one a little bit more detrimental.
I mean, I agree. And just like I've seen a lot of like couples that like quarantine together, and now they're not together because they see how they really are. They're like we say, their own thoughts, and they really look at themselves now, and they're just they're all not together. They're like, oh well, I didn't know you were this way, because we all mask ourselves with busyness. That's how I am. Like I mask myself with like jobs and like all this and that, and it's just like we don't see the problems in other people because we cover it up with something else. And now they quarantine there. There's no, you have to stay at home, and you're home 24/7, and it's just like, okay, I didn't know you were this way. I didn't know you sleep this way, or blah blah blah. And it's just like, it's just like I can't. And now, like for me, I have a problem, like, because I'm so used to like going out, like the opposite of you, Peaks. It's like I'm so used to like going out and meeting new people, and that was kind of like my livelihood. It's just like I love going out to bars. I love meeting random people and just like making them my friends, And it's just like that's like kind of my thing. Like I literally go out by myself and I just make like 20 friends in like one night, and it's just like
That is
and
supreme
I can attest. I can attest to this. I can absolutely attest to this.
Cool.
Considering we met for literally 2 days, and now we do a podcast together.
That's incredible. Do you do like self-help sessions? Do you have a VHS series? Because I would buy that. I want to learn your ways, Paul. That's so good.
Oh man, and it makes me realize how my codependency is, and it's just like and it's just like I need to like be with someone or like talk to someone, and now that like I'm living by myself here, and it's like I'm new into this country because I grew up in San Francisco, and it's just the culture's very different. Not everybody's very outspoken. I'm very outspoken kind of person, and I tell people this here. I'm like, why are people here in this country not like outspoken. Like, you know, if there's something wrong in the country, say something about it. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, you can get literally shot on the
Yeah, I was
streets.
gonna say
You
something
don't
president. Something.
don't say anything. Please be quiet for the sake of you.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh God.
oh, jeez.
So either of you want to just comment on quarantine? We got about a minute left. Shoot us the last little thing.
I think you both kind of touched on like being by yourself and being stuck in quarantine. Like it forces a lot of us to reflect on where we are and how we feel. And like you can only distract yourself with YouTube, Netflix, Instagram, social media for so long before you have to really sit with yourself and kind of think, where am I in life? Am I happy? Am I doing okay? And what can I do to improve?
Awesome. That was a perfect minute response. That's a perfect minute response.
Spicy ending. Very nice.
So we'd like to say thank you so much, Anise, for coming on. This was a blast for me. I fucking loved it. And I'm excited to kind of just keep these conversations going now that we're already started them just off screen. And for all you listening out there, please like and subscribe, do whatever people do on social media. Tell your friends about it. We're trying to make it so that everybody knows Anise's story and it reaches back to his hometown, his family, so that we all.
He just so casually said that.
Thank you so much, Anise. I really do appreciate it. If you have anything to plug it now. If you'd really quickly like to plug the oxidative copper catalyzed aerylation of sp3 carbon centers via decarboxylation, you totally can. Or if you have anything else.
What is that a rock?
I wish I had something clever to say right now because I'm not going to plug any of my socials. Go talk to your neighbor. There. Go talk to your neighbor. Everyone go out and make a friend in your neighborhood. I'm probably not going to do that, but you should.
That's advice.
Yeah, that's what advice is. You don't have to do it.
Yeah. So go make that community. Go make some friends. Okay.
All right.
Wear a mask.
Everyone
in America, wear a mask. I don't know what y'all doing. Wear a mask.
With Sharin Stories, that comes from a scientist, just so everybody knows. With Sharin Stories, we say goodbye and thank you to all of our listeners.